So, when I am pushed to really think about a piece of scripture, which I only do if someone's going to make me talk about it, I love to see what the world brings me about it. This time it was actually a hidden brain podcast on right brain, left brain function. Now, the podcast was from a book, The Master and His Emissary by Ian McGilchrist. And first off, he says almost everything we think we know about right brain and left brain is wrong. It's all sort of pop psychology. But that there really is a big difference between how the right brain and the left brain look at the world. At the most simple level, the right brain sees the big picture, and the left brain sees the details. And so he describes it with a musical example. You listen to and love a piece of music, that's the whole thing, that's more a right brain function. Then, if you're Bruce, you've got to learn how to play it. You've got to look at all those notes individually, figure out where my hands go, what's the timing, and practice it. That's detail stuff, that's the left brain. But to actually play it, you can't be concentrating on those individual notes or it won't come together in a piece of music. That needs to be reintegrated as the right brain. And to put this all together has to be both of them working. You can't just listen to that piece of music, at least I sure can't, and play it. You got to put in that work. But you can't be stuck in the detailed part either. And McGilchrist feels that our current society has gotten totally obsessed with the left brain, the logical, detailed, really nitty-gritty, fact-based stuff, and not the big picture stuff. And he says that when we just pay attention to this little gritty stuff, we ignore a lot of important stuff, including relationships with other people. Right brain is more looking out from yourself, looking at other people. And it's also more creative, so that it actually uses this stuff. And that we become more technical, we become more focused on us, we become more focused on individual ideas, and we're much more likely to be, no, we've got to do it this way. And this people, no, we've got to do it this way. And then you get in these warring camps, it's A or it's B, and it's maybe K is really a good idea, but you don't get there, in a left brain world. And so we don't come up with new solutions, and we instead of being really creative, we move the status quo a little bit rather than coming up with a whole new way of doing things. And in fact, he was talking about this, it sounded so much like our current political situation. I said, did he look at what the world is now and then he decided to come up with some theory to explain it, because it sounds really like a mess that way. So what does this have to do with the Spirit and Pentecost? For one thing, the Spirit obviously talks to the right brain. Spirit's a really right brain thing. And that the Spirit and our right brain directs us outward into the world and opens up our worldview to a larger whole. If we're shifting to left brain thinking as individuals and as society, the Spirit's got a lot more of an uphill battle to reach us. And how do we keep a healthy balance between the right brain and the left brain? McGilchrist thinks it's art, nature, and religion. I said, but it's interesting, okay, so religion helps us balance it out, but this left brain stuff, makes it more difficult. So we have a culture that has a harder time hearing religion, and we need it more to balance out what's going on. So Pentecost is coming amidst a lot of spirit-driven events here, though, at Woodmont. And this scripture has been resonating with me for a lot of things we've been doing recently. The Korean service, our discussions on pastoral search and choosing a church logo. And recently we had a wonderful special service honoring Vivian Wakely. And we learned a lot about her going to Korea as a medical missionary. And she had to work at learning Korean to spread the good news. I bet she would have loved to have just had the Spirit settle on her and teach Korean. But she, like the disciples, she spoke to people in their own language. And I found it fascinating to speak to the Chas after the service. And one thing that struck me was that it almost felt like their religion was a newer one. you know, here in the West, Christianity's been around for a couple thousand years, and it's a little bit old hat. They felt like they were closer to when that good news was new and the disciples were spreading the word, and it was a little bit, made me think how it must have been to hear the good news initially. It was kind of scary and revolutionary and sort of titillating and exciting. Reading about the Spirit coming upon the disciples made me wonder, what were they doing in those weeks between the resurrection and Pentecost? You know, 50 days is 7 weeks. We don't hear anything about that. So I presume that they were, and here they're all in the same room together again, you know, 50 days later. So I presume that they're, you know, talking all their favorite Jesus stories, probably still trying to figure out what some of those parables meant. They're maybe planning a campaign of, you know, spreading the word, but they're really kind of all hanging together as a little group. They're probably telling the story to everyone else. I mean, how could you not? You know, that earth-shaking thing has happened to you, but they're probably being really cautious because it's dangerous telling this story. But then the Spirit came upon them, and everything changed. They had all the knowledge they needed. They knew everything before that. But they needed to get out there and share the message. They needed the push. And they needed to focus on others. Think about the fact that the disciples spoke in all those different languages. God could have just made all the foreigners understand the language of the disciples. Message would have been the same. But instead, the disciples could speak to the people in their own language. They reached out to the people as individuals, valuing their diversity. They didn't just speak in a way that people could understand. They were speaking to them. Last Sunday at the congregational meeting, Rob told us about choosing a logo. He spoke about the process of really thinking about who we were as a church and who we want to be. They decided to focus on Woodmont as a place where people could be true to themselves. We aren't asking anyone to fit a prescribed church member mold. And I realized that we were trying to do what the disciples did at Pentecost. We were trying to meet people where they are. I had the Pentecost story in mind as Rob spoke, and it really seemed to match what he was saying. I felt that the communications committee had recognized where the Spirit is at work within us. And, you know, I'm really hoping that we can be more right-brained for our own sakes, for helping the world, to have the Spirit and to reach out and to find new ways to do things and not just be stuck in the old ruts. So may the Spirit be with us at Woodmont UCC.
Amen.